expert.
Absolutely. I'm glad that we are explaining this because we are now live for our viewers.
Great.
Thank you so much, everybody, for following us and going on to the 11th episode of Talk to Your Meeting Doctors. It's amazing, Martin, what we have accomplished this year, already 11 episodes. And each time we have the most fantastic guest speakers on board.
Yeah.
And today also a guest participant, Mike Clago, is not a facilitator, but he decided to join instead of watching from the social network. He's in the Zoom room with us. So we'll probably do a sounding debrief with him in the end. Mike, if you'd be so kind to put your camera off now as we are starting the show with our guest speakers. Amazing. And thanks for being there. And any questions, please use the internal chat here on Zoom. Also, for our viewers, you are please be welcome to use LinkedIn comments. I'll be watching LinkedIn as I have my dear colleague here, PhD colleague Martin Duffy, is co-hosting this with me and is going to focus the discussion right now. Before we start, Martin, there's something we normally ask to our guest speakers before we start, but this time I'm not sure we didn't warn them, so they're going to be caught on the cold.
This is true. I was just going to say we've got just a tiny little surprise in store for you, but we always like to ask our guests, is there anything about yourself that is commonly just not known? Generally, people don't know it. About your history, your background, your interests, your hobbies, anything, just as an opener to say welcome and take the floor.
And who wants to start? That's a good question, yeah?
I'm wondering how much time we have. I can list loads of stuff, but I'll talk about one. I'm not sure if the viewers know it, but it's the most exciting part of my life. One part of my life, which is I come from a family which is most of them are in the aviation industry.
Oh.
So all of us, we were three girls who flew for three different international airlines. So we had immense exposure. We come from India, but this family was really cosmopolitan. And I'm the only one now who quit the airline and came back and continued to live my dream of being in coaching and facilitation. But I've been in the air and I still fall in love when I see an aircraft. So I wanted to tell you that I love that. Yeah. So a lot of adventure from there. And It's been a red thread in my life. Yeah.
Super. Cool. We have this shared passion then, Farah. I flew aircraft for 20 odd years before I started my current career path. So Steve.
We can talk and share some stories, Martin.
Absolutely. Yeah. Have we lost Stefania? No, Stefania is there. Okay.
Yes, I'm here still.
Steve or Stefania, jump in, guys, whichever of you wants to go first.
Shall I go?
Me connected with Farah because I'm coming from the same international family. We are spread all over the world. So I had that 3 years old calling to my cousins and wait a bit, these distance minutes of lag and waiting their reply. And I wrote in a small paper at 7 years old that I would like to live in Finland. And at 29 years old, I moved in Finland. So I'm in Finland still after 14 years. And I'm wondering how I survived from this minus 20 degrees Celsius degrees. And it's really unbelievable. But now I have the opposite problem. I'm coming back from Italy. And when I go to visit Italy, I'm wondering why I'm coming from this country. So this is the challenge and how we can really see ourselves in a changing view of us. So we change, we are humans, we change, and more we are exposed on these changes, and more we could really adjust us in a completely different environment.
So we adapt, that's the survival of our species, isn't it? Is adaptation, as Darwin would have said. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Steve?
Interesting, Stefania. I know Finland well. I'm currently training a team of 25 young Finns, and I lived in Estonia for a while, so I'm familiar with the temperatures you talk about. I had no idea what to say here. So the first thing that came to my mind is I once had a job as a chambermaid, which was the job title because they didn't have a male equivalent. So I was officially a chambermaid. It didn't mean I had a sex change in my life. It's just what I was called. But interestingly, that was my first paid job when I was still a student. And already then it taught me that I had a fascination about people. And it was very much about the people I met and the guests and the listening to them and being there and present for them. So maybe even planted the seeds of me pursuing the training and coaching that I do. I don't know, but I was a chambermaid.
Yeah. Well, Steve, maybe you've just given me the perfect segue into our theme of coaching. And is it 50% listening, 50% talking? Is it 10% listening, 90% talking? What is this thing coaching? What are we actually talking about?
Get ready to super.
Okay, well, if I can just continue that then. I train coaches, and I've written a training program on this, which I teach at various coaching schools. And I generally say, and this is my belief, that if you've done a coaching session and you're speaking for more than 10% of the time, then you're speaking too much. So that's my understanding. And it's very much about being present. It's about listening. It's about being intuitive. It's about getting rid of your own stuff and asking great questions. And if they're the right questions, it will lead to a whole wealth of ideas or reflections coming from the coachee. So my guideline, and it's not a precise science, is if I've spoken for more 10% of the time, then I'm speaking too much.
Okay, that's interesting. Farah, Stefania, your experience, does that fit?
Yeah, I'm not agree so much in this percent, because it depends a lot of the customer, of the person that we have in front of us. There are people that are really resistant. In my case, I am expert in the emotional tools using coaching. So I am an agile coach using emotions. So in a lot of culture, especially for example, the Northern Europe people, they are really resistant to speak about emotions so directly and so easily. So this 10% is starting to be a little bit more. So I speak more than 10% at the beginning. So I let a little bit flow the coaching interaction depending on who is the person in front of me. But I want to add a little bit what Steve said, that yes, we should be very neutral on listening. So we don't have to put anything about our previous experiences, previous coaching experiences as well. So I try to let my customer, a person that is a new person, a unique person. I try to reset me and believe that I am now at the first day, at the first hour of my coaching. I try to have a very white page in front of me, and it's a new story. And I try to only to put myself in the mind, in the hands, and in the heart of my customer. So we design together the pathway. So be neutral is very important, but is also a big challenge for our coach, I think, because it recasts an active listening with no judgment, with no personal comments, but we have just to be in the same side of the river of our customer and stay with him for all the coaching path.
Interesting. Farah, would that be your experience?
Absolutely. I think, while I don't think about the percentage, I know that's what it is. It's the power of being in the presence of this incredible person and just knowing that they have so much inside of them. So looking with awe at my client and believing that they have everything inside of them. So it would require me to really go with, begin with an empty cup, so I would empty my cup before I actually be part of that conversation, which would look like someone who is able to hold space, create so much of safety. And so the client is able to speak about anything. And of course, listening, as you talked about, is the power is the quality of listening that you do, and the kind of questions that you ask. So it's really being in the presence of this incredible person. And I would say, if I catch myself, I know when I've spoken too much. It's like when Steve says, I know, I say, what? So I've been there at times when I say, why? It's not about me. So, you really know how to tune that with the practice of who you're being in that conversation.
But does that actually feed into part of our title? Does that make coaching actually a bit of a fiction? So if the coachee is attending effectively for 90%, and if the coach is only attending for 10%, is it really a myth or a fiction? Does the coachee really need the coach at all? What's the add value? What's the coach bringing to the party here?
That's a great question, Martin. And the interesting thing, which I would pick up on, is you said, if the coach is only attending for 10%, no. The coach is most attending when he or she is not speaking, I would say, and that's when the coach has to be truly present, because the coach is noticing things, feeling things, being intuitive to the client, to the coachee, and then maybe just mirroring back, or that will inform the next question. And so that quiet time of the coach, I would say, is the most valuable time. And there's a lesson there for life, I think, as well, because I teach a lot of leadership training in big corporations, and I make a clear distinction that a manager needs to know stuff, needs to teach stuff, can tell people stuff, what to do and how to do it. Leaders don't do that. They create that safe space that Farah talked about, that place where people can share and truly grow in that space without feeling judged, without feeling guided or directed, but they are still asked great questions, which encourages them to explore perhaps in a way that they haven't before. But those questions and the quality of those questions will come from the 90, 80, whatever percent time when the coach is being truly present and listening. So that's how I see that. That's actually the most powerful time.
Yeah, so that idea of being present, and I think, Stefania, I think you mentioned that at the very outset, that the idea of being present, and yes, being present doesn't necessarily mean speaking.
No, the silence, actually, in the Finnish culture, the silence is one of the most important things that they are doing, Finnish people. Yeah. Silence is a transfer, simple comments through the line of minds. And I want a little bit to add some comments about Steve. Steve mentioned the powerful questions. This is a very hard topic, I think, because which are the powerful questions? I had a lot of courses when we have the list of powerful questions. Mm-hmm. But then which one is the right one? When we are starting to feeling our coaches and we are really create this trust, trust small line between the coaches, I think that we are already create a lot of powerful questions with no words. And also I think that I believe that as a coach, we have to be very careful on looking the facial expression, the tone of voice, and the body expression, the space between one word to another one. These are very good signs to let us make the powerful questions. So the quality of the question is that we are able to take the grief, the pain, or the challenge that are really important to develop with our coaches, I think. And they're usually I'm going there. And then it depends on the coaches. I am more push the button there, the accelerator, or less, because there are people very sensitive, people less sensitive, people with traumatic experiences. So we have also a little bit to handle not only what kind of powerful questions, but also how deeply we should go in that powerful, sensitive questions.
Yeah, so that kind of raises an interesting thought. Stefania, you've used a range of expressions or words there that that kind of forced me to think about the breadth of topics that might be covered in a coaching relationship. So you mentioned the word grief. You know, you mentioned the possibility of advancement, of promotion. So it sounds like there's a whole spectrum of engagement that can happen between coach and coachee. Could the three of you speak to that a little bit from your experience as to, is it a fad? So again, I go back to our topic. Is it a fad? Is it just something that it's topical, it's current, it's got currency now through social media maybe, and it's something people have to have? Or is it a significantly more substantive than that, with a much broader reach than just being faddish?
So I'm slightly biased here, obviously, because I'm a coach, but I'm also many other things, you know, and for me, it's been around for a long time, and it's definitely not a fad. And I actually did a keynote to the EU Commission last week on this, and I started off, and this is quite big, but I started off by saying to the audience, what's the purpose of life? And that's a big question, right? So we could debate that, but I'll give you my belief on that. I believe the purpose of life is growth and love. And that if you go out into any forest, you will see that the seedling will thrive if it's given the right environment to grow. Humans are the same. Our environment to grow is a loving environment. If we're given a loving environment, we grow. Then I ask, so if the purpose of life is to grow, what's your biggest potential as a human being? Well, first and foremost, you've got to grow yourself and get over your own egotistical needs and your insecurities. And that's not an easy process. And I don't think it ever stops, but we can get so far. And then when you've done that, you can get your ego and your stuff out of the way, and you can help each other people grow. And I believe that's what coaches do, a good coach. You're truly present for another person. You create the right environment, which is not romantic love, but it's one of love as I define it, which is being present and non-judgmental and genuinely curious and wanting what's right for the other person rather than what's right for you. And therefore, you're asking questions that are for the benefit of the other person, not for the benefit of you as well, which is the opposite way that we normally ask questions in life. And if we do that and do that well,
yep,
we're coaching others, actually. And that could be in the workplace. It could be a corporate coaching. It could be with a friend over a glass of wine or a cup of coffee. When we go into that coaching mode, so in that sense, it's not a fad, it's a way of being, and it's a way of communicating, which we can apply to many, many, many situations.
So Farah, let me reframe that and let me call that, so it's just being a really good friend. It doesn't need anything other than just being a very good friend. That's what good friends do.
So,
yes,
oh, sorry, Steve,
yes,
go ahead.
Sorry, no, he addressed it to you, Farah. Please go ahead.
I know of so many instances when I had goosebump moments when my friends were present to me. So it might not have been a paid coaching engagement,
yeah,
but I truly honor those moments. And those are the moments that I will never forget. And maybe those are the moments that have shifted so much for me to be able to walk into this future of becoming a coach, building coaching as a business and looking at how I can bring this to others. But those conversations, which were probably with friends, but I have a coach, one person who coached like this friend, who's just incredible. She's my older sister. She has the power of helping you in the conversation with silence, with a few questions, just looking at you like you have so much inside of you to help you to actually acknowledge so much of what you have inside of you. And I believe that it really opened my eyes of who I could be at a time when I was lost. So the question that you're asking, yes, as a friend, you can actually hold the space anytime. A lot of my time I also give to when I have some time open, I also invite people to come on for a 30-minute, like a laser conversation with me, just to help them discover where they want to go. So it could be as a friend as well. So I want to say that you can hold that space as a friend, provided you what you're trying to achieve in that conversation. Yeah. But it's not telling, right? It's about helping them to learn to explore within themselves. So it's like holding a mirror. I love doing that. Yeah,
that's interesting. So the added value that the coaching relationship. So again, I'm inclined to shift away from the word coach, that just based on what you guys are saying to us, that it's more about a type of relationship. So now, whether it's a friendship relationship or a professional paid relationship, it sounds like that doesn't actually matter. The bit that does matter is the nature of that relationship. And now, so Steve, if I take your point that the idea of growth and love combined, that if they fulfill the essence of what any of us are here for, so now that relationship is the paramount piece. So where does that take us from a future direction perspective with coaching? Is it something that becomes indispensable in this world where we seem to have to listen more and more? There seems more and more input, less and less reflection, less and less time. So is coaching as a phenomenon, is that something that has a really strong positive future as a counter to the cacophony or to the volume of noise that we seem to experience in our current environment?
I'm not quite sure if it answers the question directly, Martin, but going back to your earlier points there, I often talk about so we have formal coaching, you get a paid coach, like maybe the three of us, and somebody will pay us for an hour of our time to sit down and do a coaching session. And that's one form of coaching with qualified coaches who have that specific aim to help you grow, clarify, understand something. But I often talk about a coaching style of communication that can show up in many aspects of life. Yeah. In a conversation with a colleague over the coffee machine at work, in a good, meeting up with a friend where he or she gave you the space to grow and understand something yourself. So I think that coaching style of communication is needed more and more. I see a distinct lack of it where people have got the kind of non-judgmental patience and ability to step back and allow someone else just to express themselves, especially if they're expressing feelings. As Stefania said, I also work a lot on the feeling level, because coaching can't just be a logical, systematic process. We have to understand really how people are feeling and what those feelings mean. But we're not going to do that and learn about that if people are telling us, advising us, or fixing our problems all the time. I think of a really silly example now, but hopefully because it's so silly, people might remember this. About 5 years ago, I had a little bit of a midlife crisis, and I bought myself a sports car, and it got destroyed by some mice because the mice decided to find their way into my garage and chew all the way through the electrics, and basically the car was a write-off. And that was a good lesson in life for me, because I think that was probably the end of my materialistic journey. That was like, if I didn't get it this time, I'm never going to get the message. Thank you, universe. But the point being, at the time, I was a little bit annoyed, shall we say, in a polite way, initially. And I might have said a few things about mice, even though I generally love animals. And I was going and telling people in the local village, I can't believe bloody mice have, written off my brand new car. And most people jumped in and told me what I should have done. Oh, you should have done this, and you should have blocked these walls, and we could have told. Now, that didn't help. I didn't want anyone to tell me. I wanted people to just allow me to be angry and accept my emotion, and maybe even show me a little bit of empathy. I'd already done my research now about what I could do to fix this and how they couldn't eat my next car. So them jumping in and trying to fix my problems, which was a good intent, just made it worse for me. It's like, that's not what I was looking for. So there would have been a place where a more coaching style would have helped me a lot. And I think there's a lot of opportunities that we miss in life to be that for another person when we automatically jump in and try to fix it or problem solve, or we're a helper and we have to come with a solution. And I think that's something to reflect on. That's
interesting. Stefania, I've got a question here, a really interesting question from Mike. Mike is basically saying that if we're fulfilling a coaching type in interaction with a friend as opposed to in a professional context, does that give us a little bit more space or a little bit more time to share our own views, to offer our own insights, our own experiences, our own opinions? Or if we're staying true to a coaching relationship, should we actually be holding that back and keeping it to ourselves?
I don't know why Mike knows my experiences, because during Corona time, I have my friends that they didn't come anymore to my studio to be coached, but they use my house. So I have this big challenge that my friends, they try all the time to use my coaching tools. And this is not, I think, professional at all. So I try completely to divide the coach with my friends and with my customer. And if my friends, they want to be coach, I invite them in my company. It's very important because even though we talk about the engagement, but then there is a borderline between to be friends and to put our personal emotions, our personal comments on our friends, that is our private life, and then to give solutions to customers and for them to build something. So this is again the neutral side of coach. It's very hard because I think that as a coach, in my experiences, is a mission for me to be a coach. It's coming from my traumatic life, my traumatic events that they turn in a positive way that I want to help people. So mission, I think that means a natural attitude for us, like we are naturally preparing or coach someone. That is not teaching with competencies. It's something that is coming from our own inside us. So we can have millions of qualification as a coach, but this is not enough. I would like to add something that Steve say about what is what people they need. Yes, they need this permission to do, of course, like a kind of permission. But I think also that nowadays for the future, people, they need the self-awareness of their emotions and also their actions. They want to feel independent. They want to feel autonomous enough, and they want to be more sure that, yes, this is the actions that I have to do. So I help people to show that sometimes it was wonderful as Steve pictured the desire of people, the loving, the context of loving, but it's very hard to paint subtly which are our actions and solutions. So usually I start with the expectation and I show to my coaches that small actions, they can really let you go there in that expectation, are very easy, simple actions, are very daily actions that we can change to go at that big dream or big goal. The goals, they look like so big nowadays. So why we cannot redefine a little bit our goals today? And what I think that is really important for coaching in the future is also discoveries. why we are not anymore curious for what it will be at the end of my coaching. Any kind of results are very beautiful, I think, in a coaching session. It doesn't matter if we are failing or not, but we know what we get after. So this is super important. The discovery is what we know now then after 2, 3, 4 months of session.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Well, the three of you have an interesting geographic diversity. So you come from geographic and culturally very different backgrounds. And if I could just share an experience that I had a long time ago at this stage, when I went on a busking trip around Europe, and I started in Stockholm and I finished someplace down in the south of Switzerland. And it was only afterwards when I reflected on it that as I moved south, people physically came closer and closer and closer. That was just my observation. So in Sweden, there was a kind of a 30-meter physical separation. By the time I got to Switzerland, people had moved to sit on the bench beside me while I was playing and engaged in conversation. So my question from a coaching perspective is, do you observe or see significant differences in national cultures for the different interactions that people bring to that coaching experience?
Great question.
I can share.
Please, absolutely, Farah, yeah.
So I had this really interesting experience right after COVID in 2020, when I, for the first time, designed a group coaching session, a group coaching journey, and inviting women from across the world to be part of it. Now, of course, that was an experiment, because till then I was wearing two hats. And Paul knows the hat I was wearing. For 20 years, I've been a facilitator and a trainer, and I moved into coaching years ago, but I was preferring to do more facilitation. And of course, COVID moved me to lean into coaching a lot more. So I did this. So that's one thing that I did when I was looking at who would like to be part of a group coaching. And that's when I had people from 4 different countries who became part of that. And that was so interesting for me, because that was my first group coaching journey. And of course, having 4 cultures. And I think it gave me so many lessons of how to create that experience and to invite that and observe the nuances of how people from different cultures like to learn and share, connect. What I can say is, through that experience, I noticed that what's important for a coach or a facilitator is to ensure there's that safety and that connectedness. So there were a few things that I did before for people to get to know each other. And then we noticed along the way the different cultural nuances that came in. Everybody was embracing it, noticing that people learn differently, they share differently, they open up differently. They say, they put up their hands first or last in this group scenario. So I found that really interesting, and I learned a lot in that as well. And what I want to say is, when we're able to create that space and witness this amazing differences and similarities and honor them, that relationship is lifelong. That cohort is still connected. That cohort meets so many times, even after that coaching journey. So when you ask that question, I'm thinking about the power of working with differences. And as a coach, it's such an opportunity to start looking at, what are some of the ways in which you can create that space for them. So I think it's a lot of preparation and knowing who's going to be, who you're coaching, etc., one-on-one or group. But for me, that experience has left a big learning for me and opportunity for growth.
Stefania, you've gone from Italy to Finland, and I'm guessing a whole lot of intervening experience as well. What's your take on that, the national culture impact?
Yeah, in my private life, I was growing with these different cultural, continental different cultures. So I had to handle all the time the cultural differences. And as a coach, I starting with this step that, okay, I have to be sensitive to be out of the border. What does it mean? That there are different expression in these different cultures. So we can express ourselves with different values, but it's just an expression of it. So we have to be very careful as a coach to translate the values and the needs through the culture. This is very hard. So every time I starting to deeply observing the coaches because they are say something in their own cultural way. I'm using continuously hands, and this is very typical for Italians, but this is very annoying in the other ones.
Yeah.
So I had to learn a lot how to be this kind of one word coach that is speak with every culture.
Yeah.
But the most important side, as Farah said, is how to get then this beautiful empathic way among the cultures. I think that the connection is possible only if we are very, very sensitive on the potential resources of human people, human being. So I don't care so much on the first phase of expression, because this is the first starting. Now I can starting to do like that. This is the most fast things that you can see from me. Blah, 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 blah. This is what Finnish, they say that I'm blah, blah, blah. And for me, Finns are, they say, moi. Yeah. These are very evident, and unfortunately, this is the introduction of the personality, the first minutes. So we have suddenly, as a coach, to go behind that first introduction, and we have to go deeply on the human values, what that person needs. Of course, I understand very well the picture of Martin that say that Stockholm, no people, they hug 3 meters of distance. Corona didn't affect us in this cultural feeling close. And then in the south of Italy, everyone is coming in your space every time.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful to have this variation, but coaching is something really behind the culture, I think, and should be behind the culture. It should be only to people, to the deep side of all of us as individuals.
Yeah, it's really interesting. That's Steve.
I would fully agree with what Stefania just said. Right now, I'm the 2 big teams I'm working with: a Finnish team and an Italian team, and so on the surface, my poor English colleague, he hadn't worked with Finns before, and we've done 3 online sessions with them, and he's coming to me like, they don't understand any of this. They don't get any of it. They're not engaged at all. I'm like, no, they're loving it. You just don't see it. And then we have the opposite extreme on the surface from the Italians, who are very expressive and very emotions are out there. But I've developed I work with a leadership model where we often end up doing the coaching around the themes, and the themes are core values, self-worth, self-awareness, empathy, and these kind of areas. And what I've found, because I've worked with people from at least 40 nations now, so I've worked with nationalities all around the world. I really haven't found a difference when you get to the core human stuff.
People first.
When someone's got issues with self-belief or imposter syndrome, it's universal, and we get to the core of it and what's that about, and it's probably something that happened that screwed them up a little bit in childhood. If or the trauma is a trauma, and it will affect us emotionally, whether we're Italian, Finnish. Maybe we express it a little bit different on the outside to begin with, but once we get below that, which is what a good, trusting, open coaching relationship will do, it's the same stuff. We get down to the core human stuff. I've done a lot of work in the Middle East as well. And one of my most pleasant surprises. When I got my first job out there, it was for a group of female entrepreneurs doing a 5-day development program and then coaching a lot of them. And it was probably some of the most open, heartfelt, emotionally driven, authentic work that I'd experienced so quickly. And I thought it was going to be the opposite. You know, I had my own judgments here. People are going to be a bit closed. They're going to resist this. And no. And so, you know, I think humans are humans wherever you go.
Interesting. I'm very conscious of our time, folks. We always try to limit our offerings to about 50 minutes maximum. And believe it or not, we've been speaking for about 43 minutes, I think, Paul, at this stage, haven't we?
Exactly, Martin. And if I may, let me bring in here a little bit of technology to the equation.
Absolutely.
Because what I'm learning a lot today with you. Thank you so much for being here, all of you. And it's amazing to have this pool of expertise here around us on coaching. But that said, I'm wondering if AI, you know, a good AI algorithm can start to ask the questions that normally a coach asks, and that kind of structure can also provide us a lot of benefit without even interacting with a human person. Are you seeing this happening now with the current tools that there are out there in the market? Could this be a challenge to the profession? But on the other hand, I think that if that moves in that direction, maybe we can start thinking about coaching as a human right?
Wow. You know, I'm not qualified. I don't know enough about what's possible there to really give an informed comment on that, Paolo, but what my instinct goes, that can't be done. That can't be replicated because of the human connection and the mirror neurons and the emotions that are involved. So I honestly don't know. I know I had a friend who developed Vic, which is your virtual interactive coach, which was a highly sophisticated app. He invested literally many, many thousands of pounds, euros into that. And it hasn't taken off. It hasn't worked. And he's a great coach, by the way. He gets and understands coaching at the deepest level. So it's a nice thought that it could be available to all. I just have a question mark about that. And I honestly don't know how much we could replicate with something that was AI.
Stefania, Farah, thoughts on artificial intelligence as a potential coach?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the Johari window, and you know where the conversation really happens. The conversation, the coaching conversation, is really in that unknown space when you're discovering the unknown, and that's where there's so much of the powerful insights and discovery that takes people to take all the action they want to do. So that unknown space is, it'll be challenging for AI to be able to work in that space. I believe. I think it's something that you can work with and explore, with another human. So, but anything is possible, right? So we don't know what the future has. And in fact, coaching it's probably not the only future. There are so many other modalities to learn and grow. So I find that it's a really exciting space to be able to look at look at the future and imagine, and even talk about that question. So I find that probably would like to mull over it and hear more insights.
Stefania, thoughts on artificial intelligence?
I don't feel so close to this topic. I'm not professional to know so much about it, but my motto is let's do mistakes. So I don't think that with artificial intelligence we are so close. So let's do mistakes because we should do that. It's super important for our self-experience and then to this change, human change that needs to be happen periodically in our life. And let's discover who we are. And I think that the most beautiful things that I noticed in every coaching session with all the people all over the world is that I never know what it will be happen. So we have so huge million of resources and so million of results, and the way how we act, that I don't know if an algorithm is enough to do that.
That's absolutely. There's a final tradition that we have in hosting our fireside chats, and I normally try to do literally a 1 minute or a 1.5 minute review or summary of some of the key points that we've discussed. So if I may, I suppose we started our conversation really talking about how much engagement the coach has, and I perhaps mistakenly framed it in terms of speaking. And I think the three of you concurred that if a coach is speaking more than about 10%, it might be a little bit too much. But actually, Stefania, you said that in some instances, a little bit more initially might be necessary in order to build and establish that foundation and that relationship. But I think all of you also concurred that a key part of the coach's job is to be present. And Steve, I think you made the point that being present doesn't require you to speak, that actually being present is optimally achieved when you're not saying anything. So it's building that empathetic relationship through listening seems to be a key competence of the coach and of the coaching relationship. The 10% of time that you would end up speaking seems to be more focused on asking key questions to get to the bottom of what the coaching relationship is intended to be about. And Stefania, I think you made the point tellingly later in our conversation that being clear on what the purpose of the coaching relationship is of paramount importance, because having that clarity then helps to maximally inform the nature and the content of the questions that are going to be asked. So again, coaching is not something that has this preordained long list of typical questions. It's more about the skill and the aptitude of the coach to be able to build that empathy through listening with their coachee. Steve, I think you introduced us to your personal core belief around our purpose in life and the idea of growth and the idea of love, and that both of those can be fused together through the coach's, I suppose, use of the coaching relationship to show that form of love. It's a platonic love, but it's a love for the underlying individual. And then through that, to enable the growth, which is one of the overriding purposes. That kind of brought us into the international dimension, where I put the question to you that from your experience, do national cultures have an impact on the coaching relationship? And probably the single biggest takeaway for me is that the three of you seem to concur that actually, when you strip away all of the national boundaries, national cultures, national histories, we are all people first and foremost. And at our core, it doesn't matter where we've come from. It actually matters that we are people, and that connection through the coaching relationship actually establishes fairly quickly and can transcend national backgrounds and national histories fairly rapidly. So I hope that has done some justice to a really interesting and in-depth exploration of coaching. Fad, fiction, or the future? My vote says, actually, I think it has a pretty good future, certainly in your three very capable hands.
Fantastic. Great summary as always, Martin. Well done. And last golden nugget for each of our guest speakers today. So my challenge will be, if anyone like a business owner or an executive is watching this broadcast right now, why would she or he will be interested in starting a coaching program in his company?
Good question.
Sorry, in which company? In
his own company. For all this stuff, with this vision for coaching as a human right?
Okay.
Why would anyone be concerned about that?
For me,
really short. And
okay,
elevator pitch.
Really short, because it will, instead of him having to manage and control and have power, he will give away his power and enable other people to grow around him or her. And that's when the company will really succeed, where the team will be truly engaged and connected to the purpose, because they'll have autonomy, responsibility, and they will feel their growth.
Amazing.
That's what came to mind.
Great point, Steve. Thanks for sharing. Farah and Stefania.
I can add to that, along with what he said. I think that's powerful what you shared. I would say you will. I think it's important because of accountability. There'll be results powered by you, and that's so important, because then you can accelerate your progress of the organization and yours, and with focus. So accountability, and of course this whole thing about courage, the fact that you'll be able to see your blind spots and your patterns and move in spite of things that are holding you back. So really being that catalyst for change for yourself and as well as others. Yeah.
All right, it's amazing, Farah. Thank you so much. Stefania, last words before we close the broadcast, and I beg you for a few minutes to debrief with our guest inside the Zoom.
Yeah, directors, as I listen all the time, they don't have time for understand the emotional side of their employees, but they want an art performance. So the coach, they could be arrived there in the space where they can reinforce the renewal side of the employees using the emotional tools of coaching.
Fantastic. Okay, dear viewers. So if you are still undecided about coaching, here are 3 experts that can absolutely help you, and you should retain them right now today. Martin, again, a pleasure to be here with you, my friend.
As always, Paul. Thank you.
We are all looking forward to the 12th episode in December. We're going to host it on the 21st of December, Solstice Day, summer solstice for the ones in the South Hemisphere, of course, and winter solstice for the majority of us here in the North. And hopefully we're going to discuss video collaboration with also great guests. So stay tuned, and thank you, my colleagues, for joining us and this 11th episode of Talk to Your Knitting Daughters.
Yeah, thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you, Paul, and
Thank you all.